to finish book 2 in the future. If we really have to, if we're really low.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Oh, we're not doing this.
No. Come on, the stream wouldn't be
Well,
the same without him.
nah, sometimes you have to assert your dominance. Show everybody who's boss, you know? So if that means yeeting... Yeah, so if that means yeeting Dark Xana, then that's what has to be done. Sorry, man, but you know how this goes.
No.
Exactly. So, sorry, Dark Xana, but, you know, we have to do what has to be done. Wait.
Hello.
They can't hear
I was
you?
muted. Screw you, Cam. Cam is in chat, but not in here. There's something wrong with that.
Imagine.
There's something wrong with that. Cam not being in voice chat, it's a travesty.
Honestly.
Absolute
The fact that he would do this.
travesty.
Why would Cameron do this? That's not good enough, Cameron.
Cam, I'm literally uploading a video as we speak. It's called streaming.
Oh my god. You mean you can't stream in the... No, never mind.
I sadly couldn't like upload a video and stream at the same time. I don't have enough bandwidth right now.
Yeah.
Maybe once I get into the new place, but oh man, it's gonna be sweet. I'm gonna stream 1440 to YouTube, and YouTube's gonna love it.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh, right, you guys couldn't hear.
Oh yeah, I asked these two if I could. I asked Wazy if I could yeet you, Dark Xana. Yeet you out of out of existence.
Exactly. Because you just showed him up with the whole... You roasted him with the whole,
well, no, he didn't roast
finally...
me.
Still. Not as good as Jeremy, but still.
Probably as good as Jeremy.
Jeremy the Roast King. That's one thing that Chronicles has taught me. Jeremy will not be afraid to roast you over an open flame. So
yeah, freaking Chronicles Jeremy is a fucking mad lad.
You know he had to do it to him. And
all right, well, enough dilly-dallying, because Cam's going to be lame and not join us in VC. So, commence with the muting.
Here we go.
Wait, I don't see the... Oh, I gotta restart. Hold on.
Yeah, you just
I'll
gotta
mute.
refresh.
I'll mute.
Chapter 15, Eva Skinner, California, United States of America, January 9th. It was almost midnight on the last day of vacation. Vacation. The word crossed her mind as an annoying itch. It was the thought of another Eva, one imprisoned in a peripheral zone of her brain. The new Eva had taken a bus into downtown Berkeley, the center of the city. She had sat in silence for the entire journey, listening to the other passengers talking, people who were returning home from work, women with shopping bags, children carrying rucksacks. When the majority of the passengers disembarked, Eva had done the same. She unhurriedly continued by foot, still listening attentively. She soon discovered that in downtown Berkeley there was a station for the BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit, an important transportation route in the district. A lady had said that the BART went as far as San Francisco. She wondered if France was nearer than San Francisco. The crowd was thinning out, little by little. Eva had expected this. It was, as the humans put it, getting late. There were few people left on the wide streets that ran between the brick-colored buildings. She had to make inquiries with them. She rose from the bench where she had been sitting immobile for the past 2 hours and turned back towards the BART station. She saw a man in a black uniform with a baton affixed to his belt. Shortly beforehand, she had seen a lady stop a person wearing the same uniform to ask him for information, referring to him as an officer. Therefore, the men in uniform were there to provide information. "Pardon me, officer," she said, using the same words she had heard the lady use. "Sure, little lady," he answered with a smile. He was tall and had a prominent stomach that was straining the buttons of his uniform, a few gray hairs on his head, and a thick mustache. "Pardon me," Eva repeated mechanically. "Information." "What did you say?" The officer scratched his head, perplexed. "Do you need information?" Eva nodded. This was going quite well. She tried to smile. "Where is France?" "The Hotel France? I've never heard of it. Are your parents staying there?" No, she had failed to make herself understood. She repeated herself. "Where is France? France. French." The cop's eyes boggled. "France in Europe?" He laughed. "And you want to try and reach that on the BART? Ha ha. This is a metropolitan line, kiddo. You want to go down to San Francisco and then catch a plane. The airport, do you get me? To fly. France is on the other side of the world." Eva nodded. She understood airport and knew what an aircraft was, but the concept of on the other side of the world was evading her. "Airport," she repeated, displaying another smile and indicating the station behind her. The policeman shook his head, concerned. "You're not with your parents, are you?" "No," Eva replied. She was not concerned and had not even the slightest idea as to what the man was referring to. "What's your name?" "Eva." "Eva what?" "Eva Skinner." "And you're completely alone, Eva Skinner?" The policeman sighed resignedly, then smiled and took her hand. "Come on, then. I'll accompany you to San Francisco Airport, and then you can show me where your parents are, okay, kiddo?" He pointed towards his car, black with white doors. On the roof was a long blue light, currently extinguished. "Thank you," she answered mechanically, and she climbed in. On the way, she studied how the strange vehicle was piloted. It seemed simple. All that was required was to push a lever into a starting position, and then press one pedal for acceleration, and the other to brake. They were now moving hurriedly between tens of other cars. The light over their heads had illuminated and now drove back the surrounding darkness with intermittent blue flashes. The officer picked up a strange device with his free hand and began to speak into it. "Robertson to Central. I have in my custody one Eva Skinner, female juvenile of 12, maybe 13 years of age. She seems to be lost and was found alone at downtown Berkeley Station. I am escorting her to Central." "Airport!" Eva protested, tugging at his arm. The officer smiled at her. "Sure, kiddo. I'll take you there later. But beforehand we need to do some research, do you see?" A voice crackled inside the small box. "Roger Robertson. Should we call in child services for this?" "That'd be perfect. Let's get this sorted quickly." Eva frowned. Things were no longer proceeding as planned. She had to reach France and had already wasted enough time. "Stop." "What?" "Stop. Here. I will get out." "Don't even start thinking like that, girl. Now we're going to Central, where you'll be taken good care of while a nice lady asks you some questions." Lies, she thought. The way he was speaking sounded decidedly dishonest. "Stop!" Eva cried. Hey, girl, calm down right now," the policeman protested, looking intensely at her. Eva's arm skimmed over his, and the cars slowed down abruptly. The officer had passed out immediately, and was now curled up on the back seat of the police cruiser. Eva, sitting in the driver's seat, took the small box between her hands. "Robertson to Central," she called. Out of her mouth, "Robertson to Central," she called. Out of her mouth came a voice identical to the officer's, slightly hoarse, mellow, adult. "Central here. You still have problems with the girl?" Eva turned to look at the unconscious policeman behind her. "No," she replied, her perfect white teeth revealing themselves as she smiled. "Everything's fine. False alarm. Where's the airport?" "Officer Robinson, are you trying to be funny? You'd have to cross the Bay Bridge to San Francisco and then follow the signs. Now if you're done joking, bring that girl into Central, and then go get some sleep. Seems to me you've taken one shift too many today." Signs. So there were signs, and she had to follow them. Perhaps they moved quickly. Perfect. She disconnected the conversation. Then, softly singing a little ditty, Eva crushed the accelerated pedal beneath her foot. Chapter 16. A Brush with the Law. Central France, January 9th. Tickets, please. The conductor was a tall and severe-looking gentleman, with pronounced cheekbones over which his pale skin was drawn tight in a long, outstretched neck. On his perfectly ironed and creaseless uniform there was attached a badge that declared his name, Monsieur Jules Tatillon. Jeremy extracted his phone from a pocket and recited to the man their booking code, before explaining their situation. We had actually booked places on the next train, but we arrived at the station early and decided to catch this service. Is it possible for our tickets to be transferred? Of course. Mr. Tatillon checked his palm-held computer. Then he abruptly looked up. Am I much mistaken, or are you all underage? His voice was cool and personal. Jeremy hesitantly nodded. Well, you see, continued the conductor, this is very strange. These tickets have been booked in the name of one Jean-Pierre Delmas. Is he any of you? The truth is, well, you see, Jeremy tried to explain, but the conductor suddenly cut him off. I thought as much. He has in fact paid with his credit card, and you're too young to own one of those. And if he's accompanying you, where is he? No one is accompanying us, Odd intervened indignantly. We're old enough to travel alone. So says you. Look, sir, the other conductor didn't have any problems with us. Mr. Tatillon sighed. Unfortunately, not all of my colleagues apply the rules as firmly as they should, but that's no concern of mine. Might I inquire who this Mr. Delmas who purchased the ticket is? He's the principal of our school. And isn't an educational authority forbidden from allowing minors to travel alone outside of daylight hours? And am I correct in thinking you should be in school in a few hours? We're on a mission, Jeremy tried to cut in, on behalf of our school. Mr. Tatillon made an amused grimace, but there was nothing cheerful in his forced smile. Oh, I can quite imagine. He began to write in a large notepad. What are you going to do? Why, contact the next station, naturally. We'll arrive there in about 12 minutes. There you'll be placed in the custody of transport police, who will contact your parents and headmaster and try to get to the bottom of this. But you can't do that, implored Odd in a weak voice. Oh, I can, young man, and if I was in your position, I would hope that your parents have no idea of what's happened and that you had this bright idea all by yourselves. If that's not the case, this could be interpreted as a declaration of child abandonment. This said, Mr. Tatillon clicked his heels together and set off down the carriage. Where are you going now? Asked a pale Yumi. To finish my rounds, the man answered quietly. But don't worry, when the train stops, I'll be back to escort you off it. Oh man, my mother always told me I'd end up in prison, Odd grieved, once the infernal conductor had disappeared into the next carriage. Jeremy, this is your fault. We should have never have used that credit card. That man is mad. How did you think you could pass yourself off as an escort of minors? Gah! Guys, this is my responsibility, Jeremy apologized. It's not a question of responsibility. The police! Do you understand? The police! Prison, Odd repeated despondently. Calm down, Odd. We don't go to prison. We're underage. The worst that can happen is that the principal suspends us from school. Suspended? And which of us gets to tell him? That's enough! Alita screamed. The group fell silent immediately and stared fixedly at her. Quarreling isn't going to do us any good, the girl added, shaking her hair about. Right now, we need to think of what to do next. We could escape. What, jump off the train and knock ourselves back to the 14th century? When they ask us to get off the train, we could refuse. Yeah, and that would end with them genuinely arresting us. The real problem was Aelita. Jeremy and the others had created a fictitious identity for her, but if the police did any research into their backgrounds, then the framework that they had so skillfully built would be quickly shaken apart. The 12 minutes that separated them from their fate crept by with agonizing slowness. Eventually, the train pulled into the science fiction-like station of Léon Saint-Exupéry. It was a gigantic steel and glass structure, curved into soft and wavy lines, which in the center rose into a kind of wing. From inside, powerful lights illuminated the surrounding environment like day. Someone cleared their throat from behind them. Tatillon. Children, end of the line. As they stepped onto the platform, they saw a small buggy had arrived, like one that might be used in a golf course. On the little machine's white and blue bodywork was written the word police. Driving it was a uniformed young man with a tired look about him, short-cut fair hair, and a nose that all by itself managed to fill 3/4 of his face. I am Officer Ray Crane, he presented himself. "There you are. These are the children," Mr. Tadion said in greeting. Then he lowered his voice. "In confidence, officer. I would not be surprised if they had stolen the credit card and used it for goodness knows what else. They don't have particularly trustworthy faces." "We're standing right here, you know," Jeremy interrupted resentfully. Tatian continued, "And as for that boy there," he indicated Odd, "when he started protesting that I could not call the police, I was concerned that he was about to attack me." The friends looked incredulously at one another. What breed of conductor had they encountered? "Look, that's just nuts!" Yumi burst out. Tatian raised an eyebrow. "See what I mean?" he murmured, turning away to face the officer. "It's not a problem," Roger Crane assured him. And come to think of it, you'd best be off." "In exactly 1 minute and 20 seconds, Tatian said, glancing at his watch. "I certainly can't make the train depart in advance of the timetable." Seated in the back of the mini police car, the children looked around as they were paraded through the main concourse. The station served the adjacent Lyon Saint-Exupéry airport, and even though it was late at night, the loudspeakers crackled continuously, announcing departing trains and planes, and crowds of people were moving in mass on either side. Businessmen, carrying suitcases and with newspapers rolled up under their arms, were drinking coffee at a bar as if it was the middle of the day. The office parked up outside a great sliding door decorated with the police coat of arms and gestured for them to enter. He led them into a small room. It was empty except for a pair of chairs leaning against the wall. Then he left, locking the door behind him. "Well, now what do we do?" asked Jeremy. "We wait," grumbled Ulrich. They had no other options. The room was sealed and windowless. Air circulation was provided by 2 little AC gratings set almost at ceiling height, and so small that it would have been difficult to fit even a hand inside them. Odd fell asleep on one of the chairs, his head resting against the wall. Aelita squatted down on the floor, her face hidden between her knees. They were left alone as time passed by. The door creaked open sometime around 1:30 in the morning, and Officer Crane poked his head in. "All right, follow me." They were ushered into another room, furnished with only a little writing desk, cluttered with paperwork, and a chair on which the office sat, leaving them to stand. The men took a pen and a blank form and said, "Now in order, I want you to give me your names." The 5 held their heads low. The policeman smiled. "Well, based on the facts available to me, I'll supply you with my version of what I believe has happened here," he said, using the tone of an older brother. "You all thought that since it was the last day of the holidays, you should all take a little trip together. You've told your parents a little poppycock, claiming that you," he indicated Ulrich, "would be sleeping at his house," he indicated towards Jeremy, "and he at your house. You've taken a ride on a fantastic ultra-fast TGV, but were nabbed by that boring old man Tadion, and so, here you are. Now, if you tell me your names, I'll phone your parents, you'll each receive a lovely scolding, and we can all go home to bed." He paused. "If, however, you remain silent, I'll be forced to shut you up in there again and contact social services. The case will pass into the beautiful world of official proceedings, and you'll all risk ending up in front of a juvenile judge. And after all that is done, then you'll give your names, and your parents will be much angry, I can promise you that." "Jeremy Belpois," Jeremy began, keeping his head lowered. Ulrich stern. "Yumi Ishiyama." "Aelita Stones." "Not Della Robbia." Roger Crane seemed satisfied. "Well done, kids. Now, let's put together the full story of how you came to be here. And above all else, I want to know about this credit card addressed to one Jean-Pierre Delmas." When they had finished the story, the policeman remained silent for a while. When he eventually spoke, there were no reproachful tones in his voice, but the intent could be felt powerfully, like a stab to the chest. "Do you know what it's called, what you've committed?" Jeremy muttered something. "I didn't hear that. You'll have to speak up." "Theft." "Correct. And do you believe that's something admirable?" "No, sir. I made a mistake and I'm ashamed of it." "I'd very much hope so," Roger the officer reaffirmed. He stretched his legs and put his feet up on the desk. One of the mountains of paperwork fell onto the floor, but the young man seemed unconcerned. Then someone knocked on the office door, and an instant later another man let himself in. He was a spitting image of the police officer, but was several years younger and had long hair, partially hidden by a comical green hat fitted with a visor. His face was softened by a good-natured expression. "Roger," he greeted. "Renee." The newcomer looked towards the group. "Do you still have much to do?" "Honestly, bro, I couldn't say." "Well, I wanted to let you know that I'm heading off. I thought you wanted a lift to Ma's house by tomorrow morning." Roger Crane checked the time. "It is pretty late." He drummed a pencil on the surface of the desk, then he thoughtfully regarded the 5 youths. "One thing still isn't clear to me. Could you share why you took it upon yourselves to make such a long train journey? And a night, no less." "It was my fault," Aelita stepped forward. She told them everything, that her father had died, how they'd found the sack of mortar and had chased up the building company, and had gone to visit the contractor in the hope of finding some information. She neatly skipped over all the parts concerning Lyoko and the secret room. Roger and Renee Crane sat listening in fascination throughout the story. and even if the policeman did not buy into the whole of it, he at least acted like he believed them. He took the form on which he had been scribbling on up to that point and said, "You see, kids, I can now phone your parents and wake them up in the middle of the night. They will be frightened, they will be angry, and they'll wonder if they've misplaced their trust in you. And the weight of your mistakes will become their burden to bear. And that would just be the start of it, do you see? But instead, you've all had a good scare. You now understand what it's like to be held in a police station, and I'd hope that you've now got no desire to repeat the experience." "Oh, absolutely not," Odd confirmed, shaking his head vigorously. "You're all kids," Rene Crane ruled, "and kids do stupid things. When we were your age, we did the same." "You're all kids," Rene Crane ruled, "and kids do stupid things. When we were your age, we did the same." Roger shot a reproachful glance at his brother, but his eyes were smiling. "So, I've got an idea." And that is? "To put it short, this one time I'll let you go, and so spare your poor parents multiple cardiac arrests. But in 2 days' time I'll contact the principal of your school, inform him that we're concerned about fraudsters in the area, and we'll ask him to check his credit cards. If the money has been returned to his account before that time, then there's been no theft and we can all rest easy. But if not," he looked at Jeremy and added, "well, if your friend here is clever enough with computers to withdraw money from an educational account without being detected, then I'm sure he knows how to pay it back in as well." "I'll do it first thing tomorrow morning, sirs." "All right then. Now hit the road and get out of here. I don't want to see any more of you. Skedaddle." The group remained immobile, standing on their feet in the center of the room. "I said shoo." Now it was Ulrich who chose to speak for the group. There's just one small problem, officer. How do we now get ourselves home?" Yes," admitted Crane. "You've now missed the last train, and, of course, you can't make the trip on foot." He tapped momentarily on the top of the desk. Then he looked towards his brother, who was still waiting expectantly. "What do you say?" "I say we deliver them with the post." The station car park was illuminated by street lamps that cast yellow-orange cones of light on the thin mantle of snow. Roger Crane had stamped his time card, changed clothes, and was now wearing a pair of velvet trousers and a thick overcoat. Despite this, he still managed to convey the serious attitude of a policeman, and Jeremy now understood what books meant when they described someone as having the face of a cop. "Evening, officer," greeted a taxi driver who was smoking a cigarette and leaning on the door of his car while waiting for a fare. "Hi, Tom. What's the deal with these kids, then? Have you arrested them? Are they beginning their sentences, eh?" Tom chortled. "Actually, these are highly dangerous criminals. I'm transporting them to be incarcerated in the cooler." "Ha ha! On a night like this, it's hardly necessary." Roger Crane led on, rotating his position among the 5 youths. Then the headlights of a large van cut through the night as it pulled up a short distance from them. The imposing vehicle was colored a dirty white. Along the sides, in complicated serif font characters, was written, "The Investigator." "But that's one of our city's newspapers," Yumi said, recognizing it. Crane nodded. "Yes, but they print it here. And my brother is one of the drivers who delivered fresh editions to the news agents. This is his van, your passage home." "Great! We'll arrive in the city around 5 in the morning." "What do you mean by 'will arrive'?" asked Ulrich. Officer Crane yawned. "I'm coming too. I promised my mother that I would drop in and say hello to her." Rene jumped down from the van. "You kids, I'm sorry to say, will have to be comfortable with riding in the back with the newspapers. There's only room for one of you in the cab." The van's back doors opened, revealing pile upon pile of fresh daily newspapers. The Investigator heading, printed on each copy in large red characters, was still damp. A political cartoon featuring the caricature of a local politician dominated the front pages. "So you'll have plenty to read along the way," Rene smiled. "Even though it will be pretty dark, and cold, I'm afraid, but if you tell each other stories, I'm sure time will pass by much quicker. So, which of you will ride up in front of me and Roger? One of the girls, perhaps?" There was a flash of light in Elita's eyes. "No, thank you. I'm more interested in the stories," she answered hurriedly. "Well," commented Rene, "stories are the best things in life. Do you want to come, then?" he said to Yumi. "I understand my brother's not the best of company, but I'm nice enough, and it's warmer in the cab." Yumi laughed. "Gladly, thank you. We're agreed, then. The stowaways with the newspapers and the girl up front. We're set!" But Yumi had to endure Roger recounting to his brother the entire story of the pedantic conductor, which Rene still didn't know about. Seated in the van's passenger compartment between the two brothers, she became more and more ashamed. The windscreen wipers flicked back and forth, brushing ribbons of light on the glass. They were merging with the autoroute, the northbound motorway. "All can find a secret in you," whispered Roger in the tones of an accomplice. "My brother is a great thriller writer." "Really? Are you serious?" Now Yumi was genuinely interested. Rene shook his head, embarrassed. Let's just say that I'm working on it. But if you're really interested, I can say that in my next book, the murderer is a printer, one of the people who publish the daily newspapers. Are you just messing with me? Said Yumi distrustfully. I would never allow myself. Here, I'll describe the first scene. A beautiful young woman meets this stranger, the printer, in a bar. He takes her to see the place where he works, and there's these gigantic machines, right? They receive from computers all the data of the articles they are to print, and then snorting and puffing, they set themselves into motion. Great rollers start turning with monstrous strength. At a certain point, the girl tells the printer that she would love to end up on the front page. He gives her a push, and she does indeed end on the front page. You understand? Purr, commented Yumi. Renee, I think this little miss has gone through quite enough emotional stress for today, commented Roger, smiling. Moving along, I found the information you were asking me for. Perfect, fire away. Well, I've discovered that there's an entire science devoted to different invisible inks, Roger continued. From the classic lemon juice to complex chemical compounds. Anyway, in the police archives, I found an interesting example that you could use in the final scene. Brilliant, Renee exulted. Okay, have you ever heard of potassium ferrocyanide? Renee put a piece of chewing gum in his mouth and passed the pack to Yumi. No, explain. You create an 8% solution of ferrocyanide, and then you bathe the tip of a pen in it and write with it on a sheet of normal white paper. The writing will be perfectly invisible, but if you then paint the sheet with a solution of iron nitrate, then BAM! The letters will appear, one by one, in a delicate pale blue color. That's just perfect, Big Brother! Yeah, it seems like it was quite a popular method a few years back. It's simple to prepare, and iron nitrate is quite common. Yumi's head had begun to bob sleepily. The cab of the van was quite warm, and the conversation was somewhat over her head, and it was very late at night. Almost without realizing it, the girl closed her eyes and slipped into a restless sleep. Initially, they had thought that riding in the cargo compartment of a van would be quite poetic. After 2 minutes, it was still poetic but somewhat uncomfortable. After another 10, they understood that this would be a hellish journey. The columns of stacked newspapers took up all the available space, and, even if they cleared an area towards the back, bone-freezing draughts were entering under the closed loading doors. Besides, the fresh ink was staining their hands and clothes, and the smell of it was strong enough to stifle their breathing. Odd already had the word investigator imprinted on his jacket and trousers. There were no seats. Every pothole caused the group to start and jolted them from side to side. What a journey, Odd lamented to himself for the millionth time, and here was me hoping to catch 40 winks. Oric was almost invisible in the gloom. I'm just thanking our lucky stars that things have gone this well. Yes, Aelita concurred. It was lucky that Crane's brother arrived when he did. He was able to disperse some of the tension. It's all my fault, apologized Jeremy, also for the millionth time. Another pothole. They lost their balance and fell against a column of papers that reached as high as the roof plating. It took several minutes to restore order. I hope no one else ever learns about this, Oric sighed. Oh, certainly not. Our epic journey will forever remain a secret. Oh, certainly not. Our epic journey will forever remain a secret. I swear it. Me too. Me too. After some time, Odd added, You know, sleeping like this really isn't possible. We'd better off taking advantage of this to finish our video diary. That's what I was hoping you would say, admitted Aelita. I've got a sense that there are still some things that I need to know. Jeremy fussed with his jacket and managed to extract the camcorder. He turned it on, and the inbuilt screen shone blue for a moment in the dark. He shook his head. We won't be able to film anything in here. It doesn't have infrared capacity. That's no loss, consoled Oric. The audio will be enough, and the important thing is that it will help us pass the time. The important thing is that you tell me everything, every detail, corrected Aelita. So what happened after you brought me back into the real world?
Casual wire fraud. All right,
Oh, boy.
Wazy, come on. There we go. Hello. I just it's so I feel like Jeremy just the only reason Jeremy did the tickets that way is plot. Because
Pretty much.
like how else would, because we all know he has to be committing wire fraud or something in order to pay for Aelita's bills. There's no way he's doing that with the allowance
On a regular basis.
his family gives, his parents give him.
Mhm.
Unless he just convinced his parents to be like, hey guys, this girl, I really like her.
I mean,
she can't afford to go to Caddick. Could you help me out here?
Jeremy's family is. I I believe they're very well-to-do, but I don't think they're that well-to-do. You know.
it's just like
So,
it feels like he half-asses it, cause like
yeah,
come on, Jeremy, you couldn't just wire
they're
fraud
better.
some and then
Really?
extract the cash from an ATM to buy the tickets? Like, I feel like there's just so much risk. I mean, I guess Jeremy doesn't always properly account risks when he does stuff. It's kind of one of his character traits. But I still feel like
Mhm.
the simpler thing would have just been, take a little extra, scrape a little extra money off this time and pay for the tickets with cash.
Nah, he had to do it. He had to do it that way and suffered for it.
I
Just
know.
can't.
I know for a fact that the scene with them talking about the invisible ink thing comes up later, and so that's a little bit of foreshadowing. So they needed you to hear about that in order for it to come up later. I get that, and then they're using the rest of the crew chilling. They were gonna sleep, but they can't, so they're gonna talk about more backstory. So this is why they need to get caught. And I also get the sense that this is trying to be like, oh, this is the real world. There are real consequences.
I
There's
mean, you
police
could just
here.
have an overly suspicious conductor. He doesn't have to like they don't have to have tickets under someone's name. That
No.
like, because you could just have a conductor be like, where's your parents? And then we don't have parents. And then that's it. That's enough probable cause for him to detain
Well,
them.
no. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Like, and then obviously they're detained and they can't take their train back because they missed it or whatever. And that's how they get the ride. Like, you don't have to have the tickets in Jean-Pierre's name for this to work. It's simply
plot.
because the writer just, I guess, wanted the plot to be that way, which is fine.
You know,
It's a little out of character for Jeremy, who basically could afford whatever he wants.
Especially because I know next book he
That's
gets full blown clever and really starts outsmarting some bad guys. Like this, you're right. I never thought of it before, but he really should have known better. But it's set up in such a way to say this is the first time Jeremy has done something this illegal, and everyone calls him out on it, and it's like, wow, he learned
Did
the
we
lesson.
miss Xana Awakens or something? Like,
Nah. Here's the thing. This is the first one that they actually know about. Like, they didn't really think about all the other stuff that he was doing, and they never asked. So Jeremy never told them. But now,
they
like,
never wondered
wait,
how Aelita pays her bills.
Nope. And that.
I mean, well, I guess because they're kids, they might not realize it. I mean, maybe I would say Ulrich probably does because well, no,
I feel like
so
I don't know.
I think Ulrich from the start would. Yumi would after her during the chips are down plot arc. After that, she'd be like, oh wow, this stuff costs money. How is he paying for Aelita again?
I feel like, actually, hear me out. I actually think Yumi is the one who would question it first because, well, one, she's the more mature one, and two, between all of the Lyoko warriors, she's the one with the family that's struggling, and honestly, I feel like Ulrich, despite everything with his dad, I feel like his family is swimming in it.
Well, no, I'm just saying Ulrich probably would realize what's going on. I'm not saying.
I think he would realize it. He just wouldn't question it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't question it. Yumi would question it because she tries to at least pretend she has some moral high ground.
And then what I said is Yumi probably would realize it after the chips are down, where she would be like, "Wow, my parents are actually really in the hole sending me to Caddick." I don't know about Odd. I don't think Odd would care. Even if Odd did realize, he wouldn't care.
Hold up.
Yumi going to boarding school, she's not dorming there, so I don't think it costs as much as it does for everyone else. Because normally when you go to a school like that, you're not just paying tuition, you're paying dorming and food, and she's probably just paying tuition and maybe a minimum meal.
That's fair too.
Tuition for those kinds of schools actually is still a decently pretty penny, even if you're not boarding, though.
Yeah,
And
usually tuition
honestly,
is, depending on where, tuition, at least, so around where I'm at, tuition is usually about as much as boarding. So usually your entire cost, yeah, I know it's America, but the entire cost is about twice tuition. I mean, obviously this is France, so it's probably tuition's probably cheaper than board, I would say, but I don't know by how much.
Well,
I mean, for all we know, tuition could just be free.
it's
No, it's not.
Probably isn't.
Like,
it really
I do get the impression that Caddick isn't exactly the most well-off school ever. I mean, there's the famous lack of money line from Chardin in
That's
Temporary Insanity.
I mean, that
but
could just be the education board doesn't want to fund liberal arts. That's literally what it could be. The school could have like plenty of money for sports teams and science facilities, but they just don't care about liberal arts.
I don't know. I don't see enough like sporting equipment like just floating around for it to look like that's where all the
I mean, the
money's
show
going.
doesn't focus much on sports aside from Ulrich playing soccer.
Yeah, it's really only the one episode, honestly. Literally only Zero Gravity Zone, and then
there's
him
2 episodes
being, like,
where they're playing soccer, Flower.
Well, I know there are a couple episodes where they're playing soccer for fun. I'm talking about there's claustrophobia as well, but I'm talking about like actually playing on a school team, like actually playing for the school versus just playing for fun.
Their science facilities seem pretty like they have a relatively large dark room.
Yep.
So I wouldn't say the school's particularly short funded. The board just doesn't fund things as equally as some people would prefer. Chardin, obviously, would prefer the school have more funding for liberal arts, but clearly the board doesn't agree.
Yeah.
How many So we have 1, 2, I think probably. So we have 4 more chapters, which would be 2 more.
Yeah, we can probably take a break right after the next one because the next one's almost like a half hour long.
It's the recap.
Yep, it's one of the recap.
No, actually, we're on season 2 now, aren't we?
No, Something in the Mind is the recap of Fight to the Finish.
What?
Yes.
What?
Did I miss?
They kind of just sort of say
season 3 doesn't happen?
Well, no. They summarize like season 2, 3, and most of 4, saying, once you were out, we still had to fight Xana because you were and we eventually defeated him. But then they just kind of hand wave it like that, and then they cover like the end, like the moment they build up to it with the introduction of Franz, and then they just build up to basically the fight to the finish. They also William doesn't join the Warriors. It's weird because they say he got possessed by Xana, but it's the way it's set up. It almost implies that this is like the first time it happens, and I'm probably spoiling it a bit. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Mute up, you two.
Chapter 17. Something in the Mind. City of the Iron Tower, France, some time ago. They began a short while after the scanners had rematerialized Alita into the real world. The strongest of headaches, taking her by surprise and leaving her breathless. Literally breathless. The cause of these headaches was incomprehensible, and yet at the same time utterly simple. Alita was still connected somehow or other to the virtual world of Lyoko. It still retained one trace of her. A painful memory. This inexplicable connection had been dramatically evident when they had tried to extinguish the supercomputer. Alita had collapsed onto the floor, senseless, lifeless. "Back on, Jeremy! Turn the computer back on!" they had shouted in the darkness of the factory's underground installation. Once again, Jeremy pushed the master switch down into its on position, and on that day they understood a simple truth. The supercomputer could not be shut down, because killing its power would also kill Alita. He had turned the issue over and over in his mind. Eventually, he had concluded that the root of the problem lay in the girl's modified memory sectors, which he himself had deleted to allow her to escape Lyoko. An unbreakable connection, and a problem too complex for him to overcome. And then there was Xana. Even if they still did not understand who or what it was, beyond the fact that it was unpredictable and malicious, Jeremy had begun to suspect that the connection between Aelita and Lyoko was somehow related to Xana's existence. But there were still too many mysteries, too many questions without answers, and a malignant, throbbing presence that overshadowed them and denied them a peaceful night's sleep. Up until that evening, the evening when everything changed. The cursor on Jeremy's computer monitor suddenly started moving by itself. One letter at a time, a word appeared, and then it finally formed a sentence. "I've finally found you." The boy stared wide-mouthed at the chat window that had appeared on the screen. For a moment he was uncertain of what he should do next, until his curiosity got the better of him. Nervously, he began to run his fingers over the keys. "Who are you?" "I am Franz Hopper." Jeremy started. It can't be. He felt a cold shiver of terror run down the length of his back. What if this was actually Xana he was in contact with? The artificial intelligence seemed obsessed with anything relating to Aelita and her father, his creator. Jeremy remained frozen, his fingers poised over the keyboard. "I am not Xana. I can prove it. Ask me anything you like. Subject me to the Turing test." Jeremy read the new message, petrified. It seemed as if whoever was writing to him could read his thoughts. He did not know how to react, or even if he should. One was forced to reflect. What did they actually know about Xana? That it was an artificial entity from an artificial world, and that it could take control of access towers and so connect to electronic equipment in the real world. So maybe it could also travel through the internet. Why not? Perhaps Xana had access to every database in the world. It could obtain any scientific text, elaborate strategies, and perform calculations at the speed of light. Perhaps. Or maybe all Jeremy had to do was shut his computer down, just close the chat window and go to bed. "Listen to me. In what way is a plumber like a doctor? Both bury their mistakes. Do I look like Xana to you? Would it ever tell a joke? Honestly, it has no sense of humor." Jeremy smiled. "Neither do you. Your joke is terrible. On this I concede to your logic." "Why did you contact me?" "We must delete it." "Delete what?" "Xana." Jeremy shook his head, more and more confused. "But who is Xana?" This time he had to wait several seconds for the answer. "The enemy." Spaghetti bolognese was perhaps the worst food to ever come out of Caddick's kitchens. Rosa, the lunch lady, was a good cook, but pasta was definitely not her strong suit. The spaghetti always ended up clumping together in a shapeless, sticky heap, while the meat sauce was too wet and quickly percolated through to the bottom of the plate, forming a small red lake of indefinable flavor. Despite this, Odd had cheerfully devoured his portion and quickly appropriated those of Yumi and Aelita. "You're disgusting, Odd," commented Ulrich. "That's what you always say. Odd, you're disgusting. Odd, you're like a pigsty. The truth is that I can't stand to see food go to waste." "Have any of you seen Jeremy?" Yumi asked, changing the subject. "No, he's not attending classes today." "I saw him this morning," Aelita added. "He was working on his computer." Odd sucked avidly at a skein of matted pasta as big as a rugby ball, shaking his head. "He's going to make himself ill if he keeps this up." At that moment, William Dunbar appeared at the bottom of the table and approached them, a dinner tray in his hands. "Mind if I sit?" Ulrich did not deign so much as to look up from his plate. "Much as it displeases me, I suspect your being here is not an accident." "Why's that? You guys need the space to sit and share the secrets of your little exclusive club with yourselves?" "Maybe." William looked about ready to hurl the contents of his tray all over Ulrich, but he restrained himself. "Have it your way, then. I think I've lost my appetite anyway." At that instant, Aelita's phone started ringing. "What did you say? What? My father? Jeremy? This isn't funny." But it was no joke. Aelita, Ulrich, Yumi, and Odd materialized onto Lyoko for what was to be the last time. An elf, a samurai, a Japanese geisha, and a cat boy with a long purple tail. For Aelita, returning to the virtual world felt like a cold shower. She was not alone in this feeling. They were in the ice sector. In front of them, the diamond-colored plain rose into a mountain, its snowy peaks interconnected with crystal bridges. From the highest peak, a cascade of water fell in a silvery shower of rain, pooling at the bottom in a sparkling little lake. The sensation of being in a false reality was even stronger here than usual. The icy white surfaces showed no reflections. The group's shadows gave the impression that they were walking several centimeters above the ground. "Where's my father?" demanded Aelita, looking around herself. "Hiding somewhere in the vicinity of the waterfall," Jeremy's voice answered within their ears. "But don't expect to recognize him easily. He has informed me that he has not taken a human form." "This smells like a trap to me," Ulrich hissed. I've got an ugly feeling that Xana's behind it. That's why we're here as well, Yumi expounded. Alita won't be in any danger if we stick with her. In the control room under the old factory, Jeremy bit his lip. In his heart, he hoped that Yumi was right, but the truth was, as always, that Alita was risking more than anyone else. Even after rematerialization, she still did not possess any life points, but he remained silent. The troop moved towards the waterfall, which was pouring into the little lake, creating a thin and intangible mist. The lake, its surface as smooth as a metal plate, could only be crossed by a little bridge that had disappeared under the vertical column of falling water. Odd set off across it first. Although gallons of water were pouring out from the mountain every second, he could not hear any noise. An eerie silence had settled across the ice. What's behind the waterfall, Jeremy? The 5th sector, the core of Lyoko. The one without a name? Right, the one without a name. And what's in there, in the core of Lyoko? I haven't the least idea. Well, let's go. Stay on your guard, guys. About halfway across the bridge, Aelita stopped. You wait here. I must go on alone. Have you lost your marbles? Aelita shook her head. It's my father that's over there. We're not 100% sure of that, Ulrich insisted. No, but I can feel it's him, and if that's the case, it might be better if we could speak in private. Yumi nodded. She's right, boys. It's her life. This is her moment. Aelita smiled, grateful. Then she turned to advance alone across the bridge, one step in front of another, while the other 3 watched her go, standing their ground with their weapons in hand. When Aelita was almost right under the fall, she braced herself for the spray, but felt nothing. The water droplets were landing on her skin for a moment and then sliding off without wetting it. They were only an illusion. Hidden behind the waterfall was a low-ceilinged cave, its floor submerged under the waters of the lake. The bridge described a great arch over the silvery liquid. And there, at the highest point, hovering in midair over the surface of the lake, there was a bright sphere. Aelita could not take her eyes off it, enchanted. It seemed to be alive. Whirls and eddies of light pulsed within it, followed by millions of tiny explosions in all the colors of the rainbow. Aelita. The sphere had spoken her name. Aelita recognized that voice in an instant. Unable to hold back her emotion, she ran up to the edge of the bridge and stretched out her arm to try and touch it. But the sphere remained at an unreachable distance, a few centimeters beyond her fingertips. My little girl, you've grown so much. I'm so very proud of you. Daddy! Virtual tears, cold and tasteless, were running down the elf's face. I wish that we had more time, my treasure, continued the sphere. Time to explain things. Time for us. But time is a luxury I can't afford. He is coming. Xana! It's a threat to us all. We must destroy it. The girl nodded. We'll do it together, Daddy. I know we will, but it won't be easy. It will do everything in its power to stop us. Daddy, I've missed you so much. And I you, my little dear. You can't imagine how much. Every moment since I was forced to leave you on your own, all those years I've done nothing but think of you and your mother and Thea. And our family. Aelita was there, immersed in that unreal and aseptic environment, and with a knot in her throat that she hoped would never thaw. The being in front of her was only a sphere of light, but that voice, that warm, resounding voice, that was the voice of her father, and it had just spoken the name of her mother. A part of her wanted to scream, Daddy, please come and hug me. Who cares about Santa and all the rest of it? I need you. But another part of her had to know. Daddy, where is my mother? She asked, her voice thin and weak. I don't know, my darling, but she is alive, and you must search for her. I've left something for you in the hermitage. It's hidden well, but I'm certain that you can find it. Why can't we find it together, Daddy? Because I myself no longer know where it is, not anymore. As time has gone by, I have had to forget certain memories so that he may not possess them. At a stroke, the sphere started and began to rotate on itself as its internal currents intensified. Xana, it murmured, he's noticed us. In the supercomputer's great control hall, Jeremy was sat immobile in front of the main screen, his hands resting on the keyboard. Around him, the hall was immersed in darkness, illuminated at intervals by flickering bursts of bright light and inscriptions that caught fire and died like flashes of lightning. Jeremy would have preferred to not have eavesdropped on that long conversation, but the monitor showed him everything that took place on Lyoko, and in any case, the supercomputer transmitted every uttered word and sigh directly to him. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he did not notice a shadow moving furtively behind him, approaching his position at the workstation. Nor did he see a hand rise up behind his shoulders, clench in a fist, and then beat down on his fair-haired head. He collapsed to the floor, unconscious. William Dunbar, their schoolmate, the boy of whom Ulrich was so jealous, looked down at him with a satisfied air and smiled. Around the frozen lake, the air suddenly seemed to become charged with electricity. From behind a spur of ice, Xana's monsters appeared in their hundreds, like a swarm of maddened insects. Yumi was the first to see them. "Over here!" she cried. "I said it was a trap," yelled Ulrich. In a flash, the team was submerged in a rain of laser bolts. Yumi threw her fans, but the number of enemies was too great. She was struck tens of times and dissolved into a puff of blue pixels. She re-emerged from the scanner column panting. "Jeremy?" she asked, catching her breath. "How are the others doing?" But from the virtualization room's loudspeakers there was no response. Yumi ascended to the level and called him again. "Jeremy?" Her friend was sprawled on the ground. His glasses lay beside him with their legs bent upwards, forlornly twisted. William Dunbar was sitting at the control console, his fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. "What have you done here?" Yumi cried, horrified. "How can you do this to—" Very slowly, William turned to face her. "Hello, my treasure," he croaked. His fascinatingly dark eyes had vanished. In their place, two unnatural fires burned with a blue light. They were the eyes of Xana. "Oh no! William, no!" Yumi was given no opportunity to try to understand how this had happened. Out of the boy's throat there came a howling scream devoid of any humanity. William leapt from the armchair and charged her so quickly that she had no time to react, seizing her by her t-shirt. Yumi was flung across the room. Her back slammed against the wall with such force that all the air was knocked out of her lungs, leaving her breathless. After several seconds she achingly rose to her feet. She aimed for the doors of the lift and threw herself in that direction, faster than she believed possible. "Jeremy!" she cried. One of the hands of the boy sprawled on the floor was moving weakly, probing across the floor in search of his glasses. Yumi did not stop. She was not exactly sure of what she was doing, but she knew that she had to get William out of that room. Inside Lyoko, in the ice sector, Odd and Ulrich reacted in surprise as the monsters appeared to retreat, flowing back behind the mountains from which they had appeared only a few minutes beforehand. "Aha!" Odd exulted. "Look, we've routed them! They're trying to escape!" "I don't think they're escaping from us. They easily outnumbered us." "So what then?" "Well, it seems like it might be a strategic retreat, or—" At that moment, the side of the mountain began to tremble unexpectedly. Then the shock transferred into the ground, and the ice beside them slid apart, carving out a deep crack. The flow of water over the falls dramatically increased in intensity for several seconds and then slowed down abruptly, reduced to a mere trickle of drips. The world of Lyoko started vibrating before their eyes, and the sensation of dizziness created by the virtual environment struck home with far more force than usual. "Do you think that Aelita needs our help?" asked Odd. "I don't know about her, but we certainly do." "Why's that?" "Look there," Ulrich indicated. From behind the ice spires a gigantic creature had emerged. It was tall enough to be able to cross the entire mountain in a single stride. Its head was a white mass marked with a single eye. From the skull there sprouted black tentacles that resembled writhing dreadlocks. The Colossus had human form, but the dimensions were incredible. It launched a punch against the flank of the mountain. A huge fragment of ice sheared off from the summit and crashed down into the lake, further widening the crevice that had been formed shortly beforehand. "Oh, crap!" murmured Odd, feeling his knees begin to tremble. "Odd! Ulrich!" Aelita's voice drew their attention. The girl was running along the ice bridge towards them, followed by a sphere of light that floated in the air behind her. She reached them in a few seconds. "This is my father," she said, indicating to the sphere. "Oh, good day, Mr. Hopper," Odd greeted him politely. He had never before had the opportunity to converse with a kind of novelty chandelier. "Am I right in hoping that you can help us beat that giant monster?" "Perhaps," answered the sphere, leaving Odd and Ulrich with their mouths hanging open. "But it is something that we must do together." "How?" "I was hoping that Jeremy would have told you." "Yeah, well, he's not been saying much of late." The Colossus took an immense step forward. The impact of its huge feet on the ice was devastating. The crack became a chasm that ran between the legs of the giant. It raised its arms toward the sky. A moment later, it brought its fists down and struck them against the ground, throwing up a wave of silver water that abruptly transformed and dissipated into a dense vapor. "Follow me," said the sphere. "It wants to prevent Aelita from being materialized." "You go, Odd." Ulrich twirled his katana. The blade whistled through the air, casting reflections of blue light. "I'll try to distract it somehow." "Let's roll, Mr. Hopper," yelled Odd, turning to the sphere. "Wherever you go, we'll follow." The Colossus unleashed another fist, and this blow drove the chasm as far as the lake, which trembled in protest as its waters began to drain away, spilling into the digital void that lurked beneath Lyoko. The sphere dived into the chasm, followed by Odd and Aelita. They landed immediately on a square platform of smooth rock, suspended in an endless abyss. On the computer display under the old factory, superimposed over the core sector of Lyoko, which up to this point had remained blank, a name appeared. Carthage. It was the name of a city without dimensions, composed composed of an infinite number of blue blocks and smooth, regular surfaces, each aligned and arranged beside the others with an almost painful, frightening precision. Hundreds of manta monsters were darting in each direction, gliding in the digital sky on great fins shaped like wings. They each had a long snout with 2 little mobile horns and a wide, flat, milky body. As soon as they noticed the intruders, they screeched an acute cry and began to converge on their position, firing clouds of lasers upon them. Odd, Aelita, and the sphere escaped under the crossfire, while the city of blue blocks seemed to infinitely shift and reconfigure itself beneath them. They found a second platform, and then a third, and ran at breakneck speed until they ran out of walkway. There was nowhere else to go. It was as if they had arrived simultaneously at both the center and the outer edge of the city. In front of them there materialized an undulating display, frameless. "It's up to you now, Aelita. You must install the program," the sphere ordered from behind their backs. "Which program?" Jeremy knows. "Jeremy, send me the data! Jeremy!" she screamed, raising her eyes to the sky. But there was no answer. Odd was vaulting back and forth on his agile legs, his outstretched wrists firing laser arrows in all directions in a desperate attempt to protect the girl. Fortunately, the monsters were seemingly ignoring the 2 children, and were concentrating all their efforts on the sphere, which floated immobile in the air, attracting swarms of the creatures like flies. Little by little, their numbers were growing. "Jeremy!" Aelita screamed again in despair. "I need the program! Please, no!" Here I am," murmured Jeremy's voice, as if re-emerging from beyond the brink of the abyss. "Where the heck have you been?" "There's been some complications. William..." "This isn't the time for a chat," I'd screamed. "Jeremy, send this damn program! And you, Mr. Hopper, you've got to get away from here. You're too easy a target." "The program," replied the sphere. "Don't worry about me. Think of the program." Aelita placed her hands on the screen, and within a few seconds she had loaded the software sent by Jeremy onto Lyoko's memory. "That's it," she announced eventually, lifting her hands away. But things were not going to be so easy. The girl examined the fluctuating screen. "I've installed the program onto the system, Jeremy, but it won't run. It's giving me an error message." "It's not an error," the boy stated. "The supercomputer doesn't have enough processing power to execute the program." Can you explain me what purpose installing it served?" screamed Odd, who was still fighting furiously against multiple flying mantas. He was exhausted, like they all were. They were pitting themselves against an indomitable force, potentially infinite. "Where can we get additional power from?" "Me," said the sphere. "You can get additional processor capacity from me." Yumi was on the old factory's first floor, at the point where the metal balcony passed through the entryway and onto the iron suspension bridge. The situation cannot be described as cheerful, not at all. William was acting like a madman, and he was now superhumanly strong. While she ran along the factory's iron balconies, Yumi could feel the fear pressing in on her. Here in reality, she had no life points, nor her razor-sharp Tessin fans. What's more, she was still hurting badly from being thrown against the wall. Another blow like that would definitely knock her out. She could not fight him, but she could try to keep him away from the control room, and in the meantime, she could try to survive. She slipped between 2 bulkheads covered in rust, alert to any suspicious sound or movement, but evidently not alert enough. William came out of nowhere like a ghost and grabbed her by the base of the neck. Yumi tried to wriggle free, but her tennis shoes slid on the cement floor without finding purchase. Her hands groped for something. "Help!" she whispered weakly. Holding her by the throat, William drew her to him, ready to hurl her against one of the factory's brick walls. Then he seemed to change his mind. His face contracted into a derisive sneer. His eyes, in which the Xana symbol shone, flickered as if due to interference. Yumi felt him lift her upwards and realized that her shoes were no longer touching the ground. William swung her towards the gap, over the balcony's railing. It was at least a 5-meter drop. He was going to throw her down. Odd had learned that there was a limit for everything. By himself, for example, he could go head-to-head with 3 or 4 monsters, but not 100. He leapt onto the back of a passing manta, seized it by the horns, and led it upwards, to where thousands of the monsters were crowding round Hopper. The manta swerved, trying to throw him, but Odd braced his feet and refused to let go of his catch. "You damn monster!" he cried. Forcing it to rear up, he managed to take out a second and then a third monster. Then he saw only the first glimmer of a laser bolt as it was fired and struck him right between the eyes. Wham! A mechanical door slid to one side, and Odd found himself in the scanner hall. "Yumi? Jeremy?" he panted distraughtly. "Odd, are you back?" It was Jeremy's voice. He seemed frightened. "Run, quick! Yumi's on the level above me, and William Dunbar's there with her." "William Dunbar? And what he's doing here? And what's he doing here?" "It's not really William, it's Xana, and he's trying to kill her." "Oh, shit!" Odd sprang forward, not needing to say anything else. His heart was beating in his chest into an infernal rhythm, but he tried to ignore the deafening throbs. He staggered across to the lift, called it, and then pressed the red button that would take him up to the factory's ground floor. Up he went. Once above, he tried to make sense of where he needed to go. Disorientated, he looked around, retching at the stale odor of the dust. Then he heard something, a low moan. In the corner of his eye he glimpsed a movement and turned to look in that direction. William was standing atop a scaffold. He was holding on to something, dangling over the chasm. Hey, wait a moment, that was Yumi! No! Odd cried instinctively. William saw him, directed a sadistic smile at him, and then let go of Yumi. Without thinking, Odd threw himself into a leap and dived in that direction. On the fringe of the frozen lake, which by now had decompiled into myriad fragments of code, Ulrich was still sparring with the Colossus. More accurately, he was running away from the monster with his tail between his legs. But that strategy did not seem to be working. He had to come up with something as soon as possible. He decided to crouch down amid the broken ice that surrounded him, waiting expectantly. Then he felt the heavy, resounding steps of the Colossus, made a prodigious forward bound, and forcefully drove his sword into the back of the monster's foot. Using the weapon as a handhold, he allowed himself to be carried along. The giant seemed unperturbed. It completed its step and shattered the last remnants of the Silver Lake. Ulrich clung to the hilt of the sword with all his strength. He managed to free the blade from the foot of the giant and jumped up again. This time he transfixed the sword in the center of the monster's thigh. He went up again. In this manner he continued his climb, up as far as the belt line. Here the slope became more difficult. The torso of the Colossus was like a great inverted shelf, impossible to scale. Instead, he waited until the giant's arm swung forward and then made a calculated jump to land on its gigantic hand, managing to plant his sword in one of the huge fingertips. At that point, the monster, which up to this moment had not even noticed his presence, reacted. The hand moved with incredible speed, and the boy had to slip into the hollow between its index and middle fingers to avoid being squashed. He realized that he had few options available to himself without external aid. "Jeremy!" he implored. "Do you read me? Jeremy!" "I'm here!" Jeremy screamed in Ulrich's ears, a moment before the Colossus again tried to crush him against the ground. This was not going well. This was really not going well. "Jeremy, I do something. I can't do anything, unless... Can you ride a motorbike? Jeremy!" Next to him, in the huge monster's palm, a little digital motorcycle appeared. The grip had loosened enough that Ulrich was able to slip out from between the fingers. He jumped onto the motorbike, threw his weight onto his wrist, and hit the accelerator. He rose along the slope of the thumb and dived into the gap beyond the nail. Now the climbing began again. The forearm, the elbow, dark and colored like scorched iron, the curve of the bicep. Now the Colossus was behaving like a person trying to swat a gnat. But instead of slowing down, Ulrich sped up further. The shoulder, the neck. At this point he folded up on the motorbike and released himself to spring upwards towards the white mask that shielded the face of the monster, which at that moment dipped and presented its single eye to him, the eye of Xana. Reacting, Ulrich drew his katana while still in midair. He rotated his arm and with every ounce of his strength drove the point of the katana into the black center of that horrible symbol. Ulrich's sword was like a pinprick to the giant. Nevertheless, it wavered. Hanging from the katana by both his arms, Ulrich tried to keep his focus. To maintain his grip, his teeth gritted. He pulled himself up and around with the strength in his arms until his feet were supported against the smooth surface of the mask. Then he pushed the katana in up to the hilt. The Colossus felt that blow. It swerved sharply to one side, and Ulrich found himself hurled into the air, a broken half of his sword in hand. Falling towards the ground, he curled up into a ball, did a somersault, and landed at his feet. The violence of the impact caused his teeth to snap together with enough force that for a moment Ulrich thought they had broken. But instead he found himself to be completely whole, including his teeth. He had no time to express his amazement. Quivering rapidly, the monster collapsed on him and disintegrated him. "Mr. Hopper," called Jeremy from his station, "we need that processing power right now." "I am ready, Jeremy," announced the sphere. "The last port is open." "Daddy, what do you mean?" begged Alita. "What power are you talking about?" She was still on the platform surrounded by the mantas. She was tense with the effort of holding them back, having discovered she could project offensive energy fields from her hands, and now she was firing them at a rate even she found impossible to believe, filling the surrounding space with pink iridescence. There was no one else present, apart from her and the sphere. "We don't have any time left, my dear," her father coaxed her. "Touch me and give me access to the program." The sphere floated towards the display, heedless of the monsters and their lasers. His surface was a deeper color now, and the liquid currents underneath were becoming agitated and violent. "No!" Alita protested. "You have to tell me what will happen to you afterwards." "Alita, stop it! Don't be foolish. Now touch me." The girl lowered her hands and stepped back. The manta showered down a hail of lasers on the sphere while the lights inside grew darker and darker until it became deep in midnight black. "Hopper, Alita, your program is losing stability. There's only 40% left," Jeremy calculated, fearful. 30, 20. Alita approached her father. "Daddy, don't go," she murmured, crying. A manta fired off another shot and she hesitated, seemingly losing consistency. Then she leapt against the sphere with the whole of her body. She embraced her father. For a moment she felt between her arms a person of flesh and blood. "Alita!" Jeremy cried. "Mr. Hopper!" The sphere dissipated. No explosions, no noise, as if it had never existed. A dense wave of liquid energy poured through the city of Carthage, and then it spread to the other sectors of Lyoko, flowing in every direction. An unstoppable tide. It flooded the mountains, the digital trees, the rocks of the desert sector, and the frozen lakes. It was a tidal wave that was hunting Xana down, following its tracks and traces. The white liquid became a mass of tentacles that were released in search of new fragments, possible new hiding places. All the Lyoko monsters, as soon as they were touched by the liquid or the tentacles, dissolved one by one into colorful bubbles. But they were unimportant, only the little fishes. When it was finally overcome by the sea of energy, Xana let loose a scream of rage and frustration, while his digital body was destroyed piece by piece. In the old factory, William too let out a howl of pain, bending over until he was doubling in on himself. His head tipped towards the ceiling, and from his wide open mouth there gushed a dense smoke, black as pitch, which twisted into wide circular coils before disappearing into nothingness. William Dunbar fainted. Several meters beneath him, Odd was holding Yumi gripped in his arms. He had managed to save her at the last second, breaking her fall with his own body, after William had hurled her down from the scaffold. "Are you all right?" he asked her. "Yes, and you?" Odd nodded, laughing. "Aside from a few dents and bruises, you should consider going on a diet." Odd, Yumi, Ulrich, and Jeremy. They all stood firm in silence in the scanner room. They were waiting for the doors of the final booth to open and return Aelita to them. Jeremy's heart was hammering in his chest, and behind the thick lenses of his glasses his eyes were red with emotion. And finally, there she was. Aelita staggered out of the scanner. She looked at them one by one, and then took a step towards Jeremy, her face scarred by tears. "He's dead, isn't he? My father." Nobody answered her. Instead, the 4 children drew near to her, all together, and wrapped her in a silent hug.
Unmute.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Wow.
Wow. So
She recently learned that she could fire energy fields. Wow.
this is what happens when your recap just kind of takes about 50% of the show and collapses it into a single chapter.
I'm telling you, you've got to do the Code Lyoko Chronicles flashback watch order for Code Lyoko.
You just
That's the only way to watch the show.
you just watch Xana Awakens, the last half of
No, it has to
Code
be a super.
and
It has to be a re-edit
Yeah.
supercut. It has to be a re-edit supercut.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
It's just like.
I'll be like, what, 2 hours?
But like.
3?
Oh, Ulrich can't super sprint, so we have to give him the bike to ride up the Colossus with because we don't know how to create tension and with words.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh. And the Colossus doesn't even die in this. It's just whatever. Ulrich doesn't even incapacitate him. He just gets to virtualize. Like, come on.
They decided that Ulrich...
It's like the second half of season 2 all the way up to Cold Sweat, but without Cold Sweat.
Yeah.
Like it's that time frame, but also like season 3 and season 4 just kind of didn't happen. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Like, okay, if you wanted to recap the series but didn't want to go full flashback for everything, you could just
chapter
have
to each season. That's all you have to fucking do.
Or you could just have Jeremy say, so after we freed you, we fought for a bit, we discovered Hopper was your dad, Xana got a hold of the keys from you, Hopper sacrificed himself, or at least we thought he did. Then, after that, we were fighting, trying to figure out a way on the internet. Xana kind of possessed you to destroy all the sectors, but it's okay because after he destroyed all the Lyoko, Hopper sent us the codes to fix it. Also, we invited William into the group, except then William got possessed by Xana and we had to fight him regularly for a while. But then eventually we freed him. Oh, by the way, we also did create a skid blend near to go across the Yeah, like the digital C doesn't get
What?
mentioned. William shows up at the end, but I don't like how this implies that this is the only time. There's a couple implications of like this is the first time this has happened, but this shouldn't be the first time this has happened.
Well, then
Like, Yumi is surprised to see Ulrich William there and that he's possessed. Like, why
just like,
else would he be?
and
Why
then,
else would Jeremy be passed out on the floor?
Yes, it's like this is the first time Xana has thought to knock out Jeremy while he's on the computer.
Well,
Even
this also
though
sounds like it's
this
the
has
first
happened many
time
times.
Xana's thought to possess someone.
Yes.
Like, oh shit, Xana can do that now?
I'm about to die. Let's try out some new
They
tricks.
devote like 2 chapters to Xana Awakens and season 1, and then the 3rd chapter recap is just, oh yeah, fight to the finish.
Basically,
Yeah.
see, you guys, when I told you this is just fight to the finish, you're like, wait, what? Now you believe me.
And then there's just stupid
I can't
stuff like
believe it.
William goes to sit down with them for breakfast or lunch or something, which was, well, it was one of the meals. And it's just like, oh, can I sit here? And then they're like, no, not really. And then it's like, oh, you guys want to keep your secrets amongst each other? It's like, William,
Well-
do you not understand why people have secrets?
To be fair, to be fair about that, the group in general throughout the show has been super suspicious, so I can at least give that enough on its own. But yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
but William, you don't walk up to people and be like, so tell me your secrets, and then they're just gonna tell you their secrets.
Well, yeah, obviously, but you know what I mean.
I don't know, and then fighting the whole Colossus and everything, and then giving, like, I get for a book you sort of have to, because you can't have everything sort of implied. Like Aelita understands what all the bell ringing her father does is, but
honestly, Hopper talking is not really.
Oh no,
I think they have him talk too much is the problem.
It's not. Yeah,
I still don't
They
think
could have
he
had him
talks too
talk a lot
much.
less, be more reserved.
I mean, it's also literally like the last time she sees him. So like, I honestly think he's fine. I think he talks enough as he needs to. I don't think he did too much, especially because we don't really meet Hopper. We don't see the diaries. We just or like. I mean, we do see another video of him later on, but
I think there's
it.
plenty of benefit to leaving him as a mysterious individual, unless you intend to sort of tell the story of Project Carthage. If you wanted to tell the story of Project Carthage,
that is the author's intent. It is going to get more into Project Carthage.
Well, then I guess.
Yeah.
Never mind. Fine, friends can talk. Yeah, no, they recap the show in a rushed manner. But even then, I think within the storytelling of Code Lyoko itself, you'd need to keep Franz mysterious.
Yeah.
Because like telling the story of Project Carthage isn't so much a Code Lyoko story as it's a I get it's in the world space, but the story sort of would function with different mechanics, and it wouldn't follow the sort of slice of lifestyle that Code Lyoko does. It's a different type of story is the thing.
I mean, I guess, but I don't know about your argument.
Yeah, I'm on the same page of Wheezy. I still think you can do the mystery. That's one of the things people criticized about the show, or the original, is that it teased us with the lore of Carthage, but it never really delved deep into it. And I'm still on the fence of how I feel about how this series of Chronicles handles the whole thing, but it does at least try to explore Carthage and talk about how it all went down. It's not going to get through all of it in the first book. It takes a few books, but you could
do the warriors discovering what Carthage was and whatnot. But I think a story about Franz Hopper wouldn't work.
Well,
CL
this story isn't
style.
about Franz Hopper. It's about the work he's done. And I still don't think you need to make him a mysterious figure. Making him a mysterious figure works for a little bit, but I don't. He doesn't come off as someone who wouldn't be talking to his daughter and giving instructions like this. Most of what he says are like instructions on what to do. Like, it's not like they have a long, tearful like conversation. It's all basically like commands and stuff. So
I don't know. Maybe him not wanting to have a long, drawn out conversation really drives home this idea that he as much as he says he loves his daughter, he doesn't really show it. Well,
they were pressed for time, and he can't talk to her very often. Again, because it's super rushed. This is literally the first time we meet Fran. This is literally the way the book sets it up. Like, Franz messages Jeremy, and then like soon after he shows up on Lyoko for the first time, and they meet and they talk.
Yeah.
Also somehow Aelita gets her memories back. Did I miss how? I don't think they ever explain how she gets her memories back. Like, she has amnesia when she gets materialized, but maybe I missed it. I don't know. Yeah.
They went over the we can't turn the computer off thing. So I guess maybe we just missed the line. We're like, oh yeah, but we solved that because we figured stuff out.
So there's a lot of fans who believe that Chronicles is the best continuation of the original. No. This is why.
As bad as Evolution was, at least it didn't literally take the entire 4 seasons of the original show and say a lot of that just didn't happen or wasn't relevant.
Like, Evolution.
Go on, Wheezy.
Evolution clearly has its own versions of what happened in seasons 1 through 4, but you can tell most of them. It's basically the same stuff happened. It's just maybe a little different. Like, you have things like the 24-hour rule implies that certain episodes probably happened a little differently. Things like Things like how, even as simple as their Lyoko forms being different as they are, and really no reaction to it, just kind of implying, yes, those were at least their forms for season 4. Like, there are a lot of things in there that it's just like, it's different, but it's not so far off where it's like criminal, like Chronicles
even then, I would argue their Lyoko outfits are just that's what it looked like in season 4. It's just the sort of more modern stylistic choices were better for the render engine, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just saying,
if you look at them, they look very similar to their season 4 outfits.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm saying, like, in, at least, quote unquote, in Evolution canon, even though it's just a visual thing, I argue, like, in quote unquote Evolution canon, no, those are the season 4 designs, and they're continuing to use those designs. They didn't change anything. They're just, that's how it is. That's how it was, is, I guess, the thing I'm trying to argue, if that makes sense. Like, we see them as redesigns. Like on the outside, you see them as redesigns, but, like, within the show's canon itself, it's like, yeah, that's how it always was, and that sort of thing. But even then, it's just like, Evolution is pretty close to the original show. It has minor differences that makes it where it is I'd call it a diverged canon, if that makes sense. Like,
it's not it is not the season 5 the creators wanted to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Granted, the creators wanted Fight to the Finish and to be season 5. Like, the entire build up to Fight the Finish was going to be season 5.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But then they got producer shafted.
Yeah,
well, I mean, literally the span of 4 episodes, they discover how to save William. They save William. They defeat Xana, and then they shut the computer off. In 4 episodes.
We've had this conversation before.
Yeah, we have. Many times. I've talked about how...
Chronicles and its way it plays with the original canon is... I mean, this
No
is
bueno.
probably the worst. This is the recaps are probably the worst of it, but like it's still throughout the entire. It was like the entire series. You just see all these things, and I'm just like, this doesn't fit with canon, or even worse. I'm like, if canon was in here, this would actually be better because it would come up more, or like some solution would be presented itself. But no, it's like this is like a slightly different telling of Code Lyoko, like a whole retelling.
But it's like I get certain things work better when you work better if you write them a certain way in a book. Franz Hopper just ringing wouldn't work well in a book. Aelita, I mean, I would argue here having Aelita come out of the scanners and describing it in words, have her come out of the scanners, look at her friends all with a solemn look, and understanding that her father is dead without saying anything. I think that would come off better in a book. But I sort of get, it doesn't
I hate to
establish
interrupt.
it.
Yeah, we should. Yeah,
we should get going. You're repeating yourself a bit, and it's getting late for some people. So I think this will be the last intermission because the final 2 chapters are really short. So
here we go.
Yeah, we do. But this one's kind of long, but the next 2 are like 3 minutes and then a minute. So
all right, we'll mute up.
All right, everyone.
We can rant in the
video
after
game
show.
go time.
Chapter 18, The Secret Room, City of the Iron Tower, France, January 10th. Jeremy paused as he counted the story to embrace Aelita, who was weeping softly, leaning against the stacks of newspapers piled high in the back of the van. "Be strong," he whispered. "Don't cry, don't cry." When she had gathered herself, Aelita pulled the handkerchief from her pocket and used it to blow her nose and dry her damp eyes. "Thanks, guys," she murmured. "I love you." They remained in silence for a short while, listening to the dull roar of the van. "Is there anything else that I should know?" Aelita asked them eventually. "Only that," Jeremy started, "some weeks ago." "We went back to the supercomputer hall," Odd said. "We talked about it, as a group, and thought about the secrets we shared," added Ulrich. But also of the dangers that had been posed to us. Xana had tried to kill us. Then what with William, and your father. We'd come to understand that what we had taken for a giant video game was more than that. That it in fact had repercussions for the entire world, for reality. And so we decided we had to turn it off, shut down the supercomputer. "It was you who did it in the end, Aelita." "You were the single one with the right to do it, or so your father had explained it to us. You went up to the master switch alone, with us standing behind you. And then you said, my father would have wanted it this way, and pulled the lever. And then we went back to my bedroom," Jeremy concluded. "We also dismantled my laptop, the one with which I was remotely accessing the factory computer. We shut the pieces in his wardrobe, like he said. And that was the end of it. It wasn't like I needed access to the supercomputer anyway, though it would have been useful for buying the train tickets," Jeremy said, scratching his head. "Yeah, make a note of that," Odd added, "because next time we travel I don't want those economy seats again." In spite of everything, in spite of the still fresh pain of certain memories, Odd's offhand remark had a strange effect on them all. Hesitantly, almost as if ashamed to, they began to laugh, lightly at first, then with more and more force, and when they stopped they understood that shared laughter was one of the most beautiful parts of their friendship. Someone knocked on the van's loading door. "Hey, you guys, you all right in there?" It was Renee Crane. They heard him fuss with a lock, and then the door opened with a click. It was still very dark outside. The man's jacket was covered with a thin layer of snow, and a small hurricane of tiny white flecks swirled agitatedly behind him. Jeremy leaned out from the van and saw that further snow had settled on the street. It had to be at least 30 centimeters deep. "Have we arrived?" he asked. "You guys have," Renee answered, "but my brother and I have a bit more driving to do, and in this weather it won't be easy." "Well, good luck to you then." Yumi came around to the back of the van with the policeman. The girl's eyes were swollen and her face was sinking into her scarf. "Someone's had a good sleep," commented Ulrich, affectionately tousling her hair. The Crane brothers had dropped them off in front of Caddick Academy's main entrance, the ornate black gate itself standing firm between 2 pillars of red brick, and beyond it was the long driveway that cut through the grounds and led towards the school's imposing buildings, currently swallowed up in the snow and gloom. "Can you find your way home from here?" Officer Crane asked. "Yes, thank you. Our house is quite nearby," Jeremy assured him. "Less than 10 minutes by foot." Well, there's nobody out on the streets at this hour, so I doubt you'll be at any risk, the policeman concluded. But I recommend that you don't get yourselves into trouble again. No, sir. And remember that on Tuesday I'll be contacting your headmaster to ensure for myself that you've repaid the debt on his credit card. Yes, sir. Eventually Roger Crane smiled. Well then, Godspeed, kids. And if you ever need another lift, just come find me. Right, but not to prison, Odd hurriedly specified. This time they all laughed. Standing next to the van in the middle of the snow, they continued to fall relentlessly. It was settling everywhere. It fell on the school, on the city's old industrial quarter beside the river, on the rusted iron bridge and the roofs of the deserted factory that occupied the entirety of its little island, and which silently held within it a secret underground castle. The children made their way slowly along, staggering drunkenly as they were assailed by the buffeting gusts of the angry, icy wind. Eventually, Odd leaned against a mailbox and sighed. Guys, I don't think I can go any further. I'm hungry, cold, and above all else, I'm about ready to pass out from sleep deprivation. Just a little more, Odd. 5 minutes and we'll be at the house. Oh, I can't wait for the moment I can slip under a warm duvet. Jeremy shook his head. You won't get the chance, I'm afraid. It's 5:30 in the morning. We've only got 3 hours before school begins. So what? Have you already forgotten about Mr. Brule and the walled-up room? What? You want to go looking for it? Right now? Odd, I feel this is the perfect night for it, Alita intervened. The last night of our winter vacation. Finally, they reached the hermitage and waited shuddering under the porch while Alita inserted the key and turned it in the lock. Inside, the villa had conserved some of the warmth from earlier in the afternoon, even though when they had left to catch the train, the group had turned off the central heating. At this point, I understand if sleeping is out of the question, lamented Odd. Otherwise, we won't get the chance tomorrow morning. But can we at least have something to eat? Who wants some sandwiches? Everyone did. Ulrich lit the boiler and turned it up to its highest setting, and then the 5 of them took refuge in the kitchen. The leftovers from their dinner earlier included bread, part of an omelet, various cheeses, and some chocolate spread. They were quickly plated up, and within a few minutes all of their jaws were fully engaged in chewing. As far as this walled-up room is concerned, Jeremy said, at last, I think we should split up. Odd, Yumi, and Ulrich, you guys work around the house knocking on the walls to see if you can find any that sound hollow. Alita and myself, meanwhile, will explore the attic. If Hopper really did leave behind a map, then she's the only one of us likely to find it. Okay, nodded Ulrich, and if anyone finds something, call the rest of us. While the others began to beat against the walls with the palms of their hands, Jeremy took down the books off the highest shelf in this attic study and laid them on the floor. Then he began methodically leafing through them. Alita, meanwhile, was wandering about the room. At one point, she noticed a worn-out leather case left on a shelf and said, There really is a little bit of everything here. Look, a little chemistry set, at least 20 years old. Then she sat on the floor beside her friend and started to sort through the books with him. Jeremy, what kind of a person was my father? She asked eventually. I didn't know him as a person, not really. But he contacted you. Yes. And you worked together. For a short time, on the program that destroyed Xana. I would never have succeeded without him. He hesitated for a moment and then added, He was the most brilliant mind you've ever known, and he loved you dearly. They continued their work in silence, eventually finishing with the books and instead searching through the magazines and periodicals. They had still found nothing useful. No notes scribbled in the margins, no suspicious pen marks, no scraps of paper slipped between the covers and the dust jackets. Nothing upon nothing. At the bottom of the attic stairs, Ulrich's voice called up to them. Guys, where are you? We're finished. And the result is a big fat 0. I'm sorry. It's the same here. Come up and give us a hand, Jeremy proposed. One by one, the others arrived in the study. They all had distraught faces, but nobody complained, and they kept on working. Nothing, Odd sighed at the end. What about that pile of magazines over there? I already checked them. The professor had done his job perfectly. If he really had left instructions as how to find the walled room, then they were extremely well hidden. Let's assume that we're looking for an actual map, Ulrich mused. But if that were the case, then Professor Hopper could have hidden it anywhere. For example, on a wall that was then painted over, or in a piece of furniture, beneath a double bottom. I don't know why, interjected Alita, but I was convinced it would be in a book, and I can say that if I was hiding something, I would have chosen to conceal it in this, the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. Why? I'm feeling a sense of familiarity with it. Goodness knows why. Perhaps my father read these stories to me when I was little. Odd, who was the bibliophile of the group, an avid reader of fiction, replied, I wouldn't buy that. Poe wrote gothic horror and mystery stories, hardly fit for a little girl. On the subject of mysteries... What? Odd took the book from Alita and began to frenetically search through it. He checked the contents and then turned to a specific page. Here! I just remembered it! Ulrich sighed in irritation. Would you care to share your brainwave with us? There's this famous short story by Poe, The Purloined Letter, in which the protagonist must find a precious letter hidden somewhere in a great hotel. Well, that sounds familiar. Yes, us. So at the end, what happens? Well, he eventually finds it, Odd snickered. In a letterbox, don't you see? The police search for his letter for days, but the single place that they fail to check is the one that's most obvious. Seems stupid to me, commented Ulrich skeptically. Odd slammed the book shut, ran down to the ground floor, went out into the garden, checked the mailbox, and returned to the attic. Okay, that was a false lead. Ulrich rolled his eyes at the ceiling. I could have told you that myself, he said ironically. Then he thought aloud again in a loud voice. Perhaps he drew it on a sheet of paper, or perhaps in one of his notebooks. Aelita finished for him. Like this. From the back pocket of her jeans, she drew the notebook that she had removed from Kiwi's mouth the previous afternoon, during the first search of the attic. The pages were all blank. But it's empty, Odd observed, disappointed. Maybe he drew it with invisible ink. Yeah, like lemon juice. At those words, Yumi's face lit up. Hey, wait, she cried. Lemon juice isn't the only kind of invisible ink that's easy to prepare. Hopper was also a science teacher, so he must have had some skill with chemistry. I wouldn't be surprised if he used potassium ferrocyanide as an invisible ink. If that's the case, all we need to reveal the secret text is some iron nitrate. They all turned to stare at her, their eyes wide open. The small leather case was quickly opened out on the floor. Inside were rows of test tubes full of various colored substances, alembics, and a little instruction manual. Much of this stuff is probably expired, Jeremy ascertained. Hopefully it will still work for us. Aelita chose a test tube full of honey-colored crystals, opened it and poured the contents onto the first page. Some damp must have penetrated the test tube because the iron nitrate fell in a single mass onto the sheet, resting on the white page like a dense stone. Aelita began to crumble it between her fingers, delicately rubbing it into the paper, and incredibly, one by one, letters appeared, blue letters written hastily years ago. My little Aelita, I can only hope it is you reading this. Recognizing the handwriting of her father, Aelita suddenly felt weak. A hand went to her mouth, and she sat in still silence, watching the words that had been intended for her taking shape on the sheets of the notebook. You must go down to the basement of the Hermitage and into the refrigerator room. Once there, you will see... With her hand trembling from emotion, Aelita started scattering iron nitrate over the following pages. A little bit at a time, a stylized plan of the Hermitage appeared, together with instructions on how to access the hidden room behind the walk-in furniture. See, I said it was in there, Odd joked. In total, the writing spread across 4 pages. At the end of the 4th, there was a short final note. I love you. And a signature, Daddy. The remaining pages were blank. Odd sprang to his feet. Last one to the basement washes the plates, he yelled, and then he rushed down the stairs. The refrigerator room had no windows. It was a simple gray rectangle of thick walls, furnished with 2 rows of low shelves on each side. Set into the ceiling were the open ends of the conduits that led to the refrigerant motor that cooled the environment. Mounted on the walls were big hooks for hanging meat on. But they were now empty, apart from cobwebs and dust. Aelita opened her father's notebook and again read out the instructions he had left her. Standing with your back to the door, look for the 3rd hook from the end on the left-hand wall. There it is, Ulrich indicated towards it. Pull it towards you. Ulrich climbed onto the shelving units to reach the book and hung on to it. They heard a loud clang, and with a soft click, the hook dropped several centimeters from its original position. Now, on the right wall, count down to the 4th shelf from the top and raise it. Odd carried the operation out, pushing the shelf in towards the wall. Close the door into the room, then reopen it and shut it again. I've done it, Jeremy announced. Finally, pull on the hook again. This time, as well as the click, they heard a mechanical creaking, and in the far wall of the room a door opened, one so narrow and low that to pass through one would need to crawl on hands and knees. On the other side, in a room that had been sealed for at least 10 years, a light turned itself on. They entered one at a time. First Aelita, then Jeremy, then Odd, Ulrich, and Yumi. Standing, they found themselves to be in a simple room with white walls that seemed freshly plastered. From the center of the ceiling there dangled an electrical cable, a single bulb swaying slightly at the end of it. The only furniture was a dark leather couch that had been arranged to face a cabinet resting against the opposite wall, on which a television set and a video cassette player sat. They were old models. The TV was deeper than it was wide, with a curved screen and a protruding cathode ray tube that pressed against the wall. Nuts, said Odd. This thing takes video cassettes. What a museum piece. Jeremy smiled. This room was sealed before DVD technology was invented. What I don't understand is why he went through so much effort. The Enterprise are constructing this and everything just to hide a couch and a TV, commented Ulrich. Perhaps this is where he came to watch sports events when his wife was hampering him? No one responded to Odd's quip, and then he suddenly remembered Aelita's great solitude. They quickly arranged themselves on the couch, Ulrich and Odd sitting on the arms because there was not enough space on the actual cushions. Jeremy began to fuss over the video player. There's already a tape? There's a tape already inside, he said. Give me a moment. The TV came to life, showing the classic gray background that indicated there was no signal. Then the recorder clicked, and the image on the screen switched to black. Jeremy turned up the volume and joined the others on the couch. Whatever this thing is, it's starting. Sweet music began to play from the old television's loudspeakers. Piano music, images, old photos yellowed with age began to slowly montage in time to the music. Aelita, only 2 or 3 years old and scampering through the garden of a mountainside chalet, a simple wooden tricycle standing to one side in the grass. Aelita again at the same age and in the arms of an incredibly beautiful woman with clear blue eyes and familiar reddish hair that grew freely over her shoulders, the two of them wearing matching short dresses patterned with flowers. Mommy, she whispered, her voice strangled with emotion. Oh, Mommy, she whispered, her voice strangled with emotion while the sequence of images continued to play. Her mother again, this time wearing an elegant evening dress and high heels. Around her neck were a string of pearls that sparkled perfectly against her clear complexion. Hopper and her mother together, both wearing white laboratory coats. Professor Hopper was smiling widely, his round face half hidden behind a thick, dark beard. And then, without warning, Hopper's voice resounded through the speaker apparatus, superimposed over the music while new photos played on the screen. Aelita on the piano, Aelita playing with her favorite doll, Hopper smiling from behind a barbecue. My dear little Aelita, it's my hope that you are here to see this video. I've taken some care in hiding it, knowing that your passion for chemistry and the blank notebook would lead you here. I hope that I know you well enough to have not made a mistake. The montage of piano music and photos stopped, and in their place the professor himself appeared, sitting on the same sofa on which the group were now themselves squatting. He was dressed in a chessboard patterned shirt and sitting with his back straight and his hands laced together over his stomach. Behind the dense lenses of his glasses, his eyelids were swollen with tiredness. Nevertheless, if you are watching this film, then it means things have not gone well for me. I swore that if I returned to the Hermitage at the end of this great adventure, that I would come directly into this room and set fire to the video cassette. If that is not the case, then I'm possibly not around anymore. This breaks my heart. I may not be there for you, my dear. The photos from the beginning of this video are the only gift I can offer to help you not feel alone. Jeremy turned towards Aelita. The girl's eyes were fixed on the screen as if hypnotized. Meanwhile, I feel I owe you some explanations. When you were born, I was still living under my real name, not Franz Hopper, but Waldo Schaefer. At the time, your mother Anthea and I were working in Switzerland on a top-secret project called Carthage, but late in the project we realized that our work was to be used not to benefit humanity, but to dominate it, and so we made the decision to escape. But we were unsuccessful. Your mother was kidnapped and taken away from us. I don't know where she is being held captive, but I am certain that she is still alive. I can only hope that she is all right. You cannot imagine how long I have searched for her. I did all that was in my power to find her again, but I had also had to think of protecting you. I hid in the city and began teaching at Caddick Academy under the assumed name of Franz Hopper. While here I also created Lyoko, using the same programs that your mother and I developed together under Project Carthage. It was my intention that Lyoko would protect us from the malign intentions of Carthage, but nevertheless, in the course of time, they tracked me here as well. And now that they have arrived, I must make fresh preparations to escape again. But they've attempted to capture you and injured you in the process. And injured you severely, a bullet to the head. You were in danger of dying. Aelita brought a shaking hand to her head, and probing between the hair, she felt a thick scar. I alone had the means to cure you, and if you are listening to me now, you already know what I mean. When I complete recording this message onto the video cassette, I will take you with me and lead you to Lyoko, to keep you safe, to heal you, but I am very afraid, Aelita. Xana. The rest of the sentence dissolved in interference, and the image on the screen flickered for an instant. But if you're listening to me, know then things clearly did not go according to plan, and so you must destroy the supercomputer and everything hidden beneath the old factory. And that's where we came in, Odd murmured. You must destroy it in order that no one else can find it and use it for themselves. But it's not the invention itself that is the problem. It is the men. These men are dangerous, Aelita. These men are evil. On the screen, Professor Hopper dried his eyes with a handkerchief. His voice was shaking with emotion and anger. Then he continued. And now we come to the second thing I must ask of you. Open the TV cabinet in this room. Inside you will find a wooden box. It contains a chain with a pendant. It was a gift that your mother made for me, and I in turn gave an identical one to her. Please treasure it as if it is the most precious thing you have. And then, Aelita, you must find your mother. I know that this is a difficult and dangerous task, my dear, but you're clever and brave, and there will certainly be someone there to help you, as there has been for me. So if you ever need help, you can call on the aid of... Interference cut the word in two, and the video skipped ahead several seconds. Earn. If you have need, turn to them, and when you embrace your mother again, please give her a kiss for me. The video jumped ahead again due to further interference, but this time nothing else played. Nothing's wrong with the cassette, Jeremy sighed in regret, having moved forward to check the player. That's the end. There isn't any more. In silence, Aelita rose from her place, stepped up to Jeremy, and gestured for him to move aside with a light touch of her fingers. Then she opened the dark door on the front of the cabinet. Just as her father had said in the video, on the inside was a wooden box, little bigger than the palm of one's hand. She opened it and extracted the pendant from within. It was affixed to a thin golden chain, a little larger than a coin, and shone so brightly that Aelita could see her reflection in it. Incised into the surface of the pendant were two letters, W and A, and beneath them was the image of a sailor's knot. Waldo and Anthea, she murmured, now remembering her father's true name. And a knot, said Jeremy. Yes, together forever. Chapter 19. Eva Skinner, California, United States of America, January 10th. The first flight to France was due to take off at 6 in the morning, and the loudspeakers were instructing its passengers to head towards the boarding gate. Eva Skinner started off through the long corridors, dragging behind her a rigid trolley that she was using to carry her hand luggage. She had changed her clothes, and now was wearing a pair of smart jeans and a color-stained t-shirt. She was smiling. To her mind, humans were very complicated creatures. To travel from America to France required her to purchase a ticket, and they needed visas and special permits because she was a minor and unaccompanied. There was the necessity of luggage and clothing, and once she arrived in France, she would still have to travel to the city where the school was located. But things were not too bad. She had taken advantage of the free time in the airport to connect to the internet and make the necessary preparations for her arrival. The headmaster would be ready to receive her tomorrow with open arms. A foreign exchange student, a girl from the United States. Eva passed the retail outlets and the duty-free stores that were one by one opening for business in the huge terminal building. She studied the monitors in search of her gate. Number 27. She had to follow the signs and get a move on. The flight was already boarding. The hostess smiled. She was a nice girl wearing a comical little hat that was matched with a chaste tailored uniform bearing the name of the airline. Your name, miss? Eva Skinner. One moment, please. She keyed something into her computer and then smiled again. One seat booked in first class, traveling unaccompanied. Fine. Young lady, could you please show me your boarding pass and the authorization of your parents? Of course. Eva handed the woman a brochure for a chain of fast food restaurants that she had found on the floor shortly beforehand. Cheeseburger deal, only $1.25. Children eat free. In handing it to the hostess, she painstakingly ensured that her long fingers brushed against hers. The woman opened her brochure, which contained a big color photograph of a cheeseburger, and nodded with a blank expression. That's fine, young lady. You can pass. My colleague on board will direct you to your seat. Eva nodded and moved onwards. Then she slipped with the other passengers into the long metal tube that led into the aircraft. First class was almost empty. Next to Eva, but separated from her by a little aisle, a woman in a dark suit was concentrating as she worked on her laptop computer. And on her other side was a rather elderly gentleman. He had been dozy even before they took off and was now dribbling on a $500 tie. Miss Skinner, is everything all right? Another hostess inquired, wearing the same smile and the same uniform as the one from the boarding gate. You can unfasten your seatbelt now that we have departed. Would you like anything to eat? I'll have the same as that gentleman, Eva answered, indicating the sleepy man. A cognac? I don't think that would be suitable, miss. Maybe you prefer a glass of fruit juice? Yes, that. The hostess hurried back up the aircraft's long aisle, her hips wiggling. She seemed happy to be making herself useful. Perhaps that was how she was paid, in making her feel useful. The armchairs were here in first class were so big and soft, comfortable. Perhaps she should sleep. Without having to worry about what happened to the body of Eva Skinner, Xana could calmly reflect and plan ahead. There were so many things that it had to consider. For example, how to befriend those children and earn their trust, and above all else, how to kill them.
I legit leave to go to the bathroom, and the chapter's done before I'm back. What?
I legit leave, go to the bathroom, and the chapter's done before I'm back.
There's only like the last chapter is like a minute long, so I think we should just watch that before we get into.
No, I just had to make.
Wait, that
comment.
wasn't the last one?
No, we got one more. Okay, mute back up.
Oh, okay.
The last chapter is a minute long, so I think we should just.
Please, you have an echo, by the way.
He's muted, so.
Chapter 20, The First Day of School, City of the Iron Tower, France, January 10th. Yumi, Jeremy, Odd, Aelita, and Auric arrived at Kedic's main gate about 10 minutes late. Eventually they had fallen asleep, but hardly an hour had passed before their alarm clock began to ring, and so there they were, breathing heavily and their eyes burning after a sleepless night. So it begins, again, commented Odd. We have 2 hours of chemistry first, said Jeremy, checking his schedule. I've got history, added Yumi. And I better get moving. Professor Fume is usually already in the classroom by now. Wait a second, replied Odd, annoyed. Are we going to start all over again with the Hermitage and Lyoko? Well, it seems clear to me, Jeremy nodded. We'll search for Aelita's mother, but we'll have the supercomputer deactivated. Aelita was wearing her father's pendant around her neck. Auric smiled. Guys, we're better off discussing this another time, all right? Yumi transferred her rucksack of books from one shoulder to another. Well, the prof waits for no man. I really gotta head off, guys. We'll see each other at dinner then, in the cafeteria. Awesome. Well, have a good first day, everybody, she answered, quickly setting off up the path beyond the gate, continuing ahead of the others. It was January, and finally it had stopped snowing. Weak but bright sunlight sparkled on the freshly salted streets. The footprints of many little gym shoes were trampled into the path leading up to Kedic's entrance. 5 children who were almost dead on their feet started running up the frozen driveway, happy to still be together in spite of everything. Before them rose the Academy's palatial main building, solemn and majestic, but there was nothing threatening about it. The winter sun was shining on the closed windows, and the great main door was wide open to receive them. They entered with a jump.
Okay, that was the last chapter.
2 pages?
Yep.
My God.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I was expecting more. Huh.
Yeah, I was expecting more too. I'm just
That's the end
making
of
a
book
note.
one.
I'm just making a note of something. Yeah, no, that was anticlimactic. I thought the ending would be a little more.
It was very it tried to be very anime in its ending. Like, what's it?
Just confusing, but still like plot concluding.
That uplifting final shot of the group together, like, yeah, and that sort of thing.
You mean how Echoes ended, essentially?
Not how Echoes ended, but I feel like more how how Code Earth ended. No, False Start ended. Sorry. That the group together all are.
So, Flower, let me get this straight. You're recording everything for a audiobook, and Dark Xana is editing everything for an audiobook.
Essentially. I'm still thinking if I ever do make a more I want to make a more polished version of this, and I kind of want to redo like basically all of it after this is done. So
I don't know if I could ever sit through another one.
I mean, I don't know, because Chronicles, now you understand, Chronicles is it's both interesting and also very frustrating at times.
Everyone's like, oh, evolution is trash. Evolution retcons too much. Have you read this book?
Yeah. Exactly. Like, oh my god. This is the first time I'm seeing the overbike. Whoa, I can't believe it. Energy fields.
What could you do with a motorcycle? A motorcycle, Jeremy. Jeremy just on the spot, like, how do we defeat this monster Xanam's created? Motorcycle. I'll whip one up real quick.
Also, I don't think the Colossus in the original was that big, where like he could literally ride his motorcycle around the palm of his hand.
Yeah, they made the Colossus bigger. They almost made the Colossus certain PE monster size.
Oh.
But I've said too much already.
Yeah, you have. You should have said that. But you really should have said that. But okay.
Hey, people speculating what I mean by that. That's their problem, not mine.
All right. But no. What's it in regards to? Yeah, the Colossus is massive.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Massive. I mean, the original Colossus is still pretty fucking huge.
Oh, it is.
I think what did I clock it in at? Hold on. It's like 2.5 towers tall, which would make it. Can I find where I did my math? Where did I do my math? No. There we go. Really?
How big is it?
Oh, I know. I'm in the wrong chat. That's why. I'm looking for it in the wrong chat.
Nice.
Okay. Let's see. So Lyoko towers are 31 odds tall. I forget what that is. So odds 4'8". Be wow, calculator, wrong screen to open up on there. 4'8", 56.
Now we really are in Lyoko theory.
25 inches divided by 12. So yeah, 116 feet is a tower. So the Colossus is about 250 feet tall. Or no, about the Colossus is almost 300 feet tall.
That sounds about
No way,
right.
I think that might be the.
Oh.
No, yeah, like 250 feet. My bad. Yeah, so. Boy.
Wow. Listen, as long as the Colossus is thick, that's all that matters.
Well, Hyper, you're also so the part the tower that I measured. So there's the shot. The Sector 5 tower is floating, so you can actually see the whole height of it. The whole height of the tower in Sector 5 is 35 odds tall. So technically, the portion we're measuring based off of, I think, was 25 odds tall. An odd being 4'8". This is also assuming real world odds height is the same as Lyoko odds height. Fun times.
Yep.
In Matthew. Man,
So,
we don't have as much to talk about when it comes to Chronicles as we
I
do
will
about
say-
the original.
I feel bad that you missed chapter.
Even
9, because
Evolution
that was, like,
had.
Your favorite? I'll probably just go back and read it, watch it later.
Yep.
I mean, we could probably go back and watch right now. It's that short.
Nah, we're good.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
No need to do that.
No, Lyoko's actually really, really big. Lyoko is not a small place. I mean, to scale relative to the Warriors, it's pretty big. I'd say it's at least, when all sectors are accounted for, probably about the size of a small city.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's not small.
that is pretty decently.
Well, keep in mind,
Yeah.
if a tower is 100 feet tall or a 10-story building,
Mhm.
and most of Lyoko, like I think if you were to measure one of the sectors across with a tower, it'd be by using a tower, it'd probably be a good couple dozen of towers. Maybe not a small, maybe not an entire small city, maybe like a downtown area of a city or something.
Right.
But no, Lyoko is not a small amount of space.
Yeah.
Oh, taken up. Well, if we think about the actual physical space Lyoko takes up, it's like probably a good couple cubits. That or Lyoko is just straight up normal hard disk space. So it's in bits, which would, I don't know, it'd be a good couple gigabytes.
It's still a quantum supercomputer, so.
Well, yeah, but
I believe they talked about qubits once, like in the show, like in regards to Lyoko, but don't cite me on that. I'm not.
okay. Well, so the thing
from
is,
A Great Day.
Yeah.
There's the entire episode where the computer's falling apart because Xana went in and damaged a bunch of the daughter boards. Those daughter boards aren't operating in qubits; they're operating in bits. So most quantum supercomputers in the real world do calculations with the quantum processor, but a lot of the outputs and interfacing with the quantum processor is a 2-bit is a bit interface. So I kind of see it as the computer handles the calculations, but a lot of the like outputs are in bit format. So Lyoko itself operates in bits as opposed to qubits. But the calculations used to make Lyoko operate in qubits. So there's a converter block somewhere in there.
Huh.
Yeah. Computers are cool.
That makes.
Dylan
Yeah, they
teaching us
are.
math with Lyoko. Welcome back to Math with Lyoko. I'm your teacher, Dylan. Today we're going to be learning about math's most famous equation, y equals ax plus b.
This is what I've been training for.
So as you can see here, I've written it on the board.
Wow.
Thank you. That concludes our class today.
Woo!
Yeah, the word's like, yeah, more time to fight Xana.
Don't die.
Too late. I'll see you in hell, lazy.
Can't wait.
Well, I'd say it's 6 o'clock. It's probably a good time to end the stream today.
Yep. Next week we start book 2, and
Woo!
the herding of the original canon continues. It's not as bad as the recap, but there's moments, and it's just like, why?
Oh boy, I can't wait.
There's this. The thing with Chronicles that annoys me is just like there's this one part that I don't like, but at the same time it's basically setting off dominoes. Like you can't just take that part out and the story would be fine because it causes this and this and that. And I'm like, I don't want it to be done this way. No. Oh.
So, thank you to everybody who tuned in. We will be back next week for our next live stream. I hope you can come. If not, well, oh well,
Yes.
that's your loss, not mine. Good
So long.
day.
Bye.